ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ गणानां त्वा गणपतिगं हवामहे कविं कवीनाम् उपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आन शृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम्। ॐ श्रीमहागणपतये नमः। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। मंगलाचरण of this text. वासुदेवेन्द्र योगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते। Okay, so in the last class we were looking at the Karmendriya and their devtas. So we'll just continue from there. So we have seen basically the different Karmendriyas and the devtas. There was a doubt or so, so I'll just clarify here also. So like Vishnu is the presiding deity in different places under different names. What is the reasoning behind that? So if you see later on, it will come Chittasya Devta Vasudev. Then we'll come back here to where we were. So the devtas for the different Karmendriya. So Vacho Devta Vanni Hastayo Indra Padayoho Vishnu. So Vishnu here is mentioned as the Devta for the feet. So we have to remember if why one deity can be the common Devta for different functions. So we have to remember firstly in Sanskrit, it's such a magical language that every object has different names. So those names, in fact, what we say actually, like we call them in Hindi, we call them Paryayavachi. Yeah, so we have different names. So if there is a lotus, then it is Pankaj. Then Pankaj means some Pankaha Ajaha, the one that has arisen from Pankaha or Kichad or from mud. So that name signifies some characteristic or trait of that object. And all those different names, they provide the vibrations from which the object is created. We say everything is created out of vibration. When vibration is removed from the universe, it goes into the state of pralayam or in the state of causal state where nothing is manifest. कुछ भी नहीं दिख रहा है. Nothing is available for perception. But then once initially the universe is brought into existence or by Bhagavan, then he is not creating anything, but he is manifesting the universe. That manifestation is done through vibration. So every word has a different vibration. So all the devtas, they have different names depending upon the function that they are doing. So like Vishnu is the Devta, he is the maintainer of the universe, right? So that name comes from Puranic times. In Vedic times, it was even Vishnu, Shiva, none of them were there. There, you won't find them in the Vedas. Even though some people claim, we can easily prove them wrong because the names there are generic names. There, Vishnu is not that Vishnu Bhagavan, but that is the aspect which is all pervading. So Vishnu means all pervading. That all pervading aspect is represented. Or what does all pervading mean? All pervading means if something can be here and there also and at the same time. Yeah. So one that is everywhere. So that aspect is denoted by the story where Vishnu ji measures the three worlds in his three steps, right? Because he is everywhere. So that is represented by that term Vishnu. So all the different names of Vishnu, Narayan, Vasudev, all of them, they signify different aspects of the same power, different functions. So when any function is being described, that name comes to the fore. So here Padayoho Vishnu is used because here Vishnu is representing the capacity to measure the three worlds. But overall, when you're talking about Vishnu in his universal form, that represents the maintainer of the universe. So the maintainer of the universe has multiple functions, right? So depending on them, different name is given. At some places, Vishnu also means Agni. So at some places, Vishnu is a brother of Indra. So it happens in like that in different scriptures, depending upon what function he is handling, right? And then we will come to something about Manaha later on, but right now we have seen that the five sense organs of speech, uh, then movement and holding, grasping, then excretion, and then uh, recreation or giving birth. All of these, the five karmendriyas, they have different devtas, right? So you have seen of all of them till now that there is one-to-one relationship. Of course, further we will see that each of them is also related to one of the five elements, right? So later on, you can go for you should make a chart of this. I did this. I can just share it for you right now, but you also make it so that you will know the correlation of the elements and all of these devtas and their objects. I'll just quickly share that. You can have a look, but you follow it later on, right? So this is the full chart. Here, the elements, five elements, Akash, Vayu, Agni, Jala, Prithvi. Each of them is the source for the sense organs, the five, Shotra, Tvach, Chakshu, Rashna, and Grahana. All of these five, and then they all have their corresponding devtas, Dik, Vayu, Surya, Varun, and Ashwina. And the Karmendriya similarly are also again born out of the five elements again. The Vak, Pani, Pad, Payu, Upastha, then they have their own devtas. Then the five Puranas also similarly born out of the five elements. And then their five sense organs. So their five sense objects. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. Then again, the mind divided into four parts, Manas, Buddhi, Chitra, Ahankar, and their devtas. So these we will keep seeing when we go along this text. But always bear in mind from this chart that you will have to make this chart on your own later on, that you should be very clear that all of them have this correlation. One element is related to one Gyanendriya, one Devta, one Karmendriya Devta, one Prana, and the sense objects. And also mind is the combination of all five elements. So that we'll see later on. That is in the second section, which is about the universal aspect, samashti. So we'll go to that later on. So right now, we'll just skip back to the text now. So we have seen, I hope it is clear so far about the five karmendriyas. They represent the five organs of action, and then they are also related to their five devtas. So those devtas represent the total potential, right? We saw that earlier also. There is any indriya or any sense organ is a power, right? We call it a shakti. It is a shakti, right? And we also have to remember that every object that we see in this universe is changing. So if it is changing, that means it does not have a consciousness of its own. It is jada. Always we have to remember that it is jada. So what is the definition of jada? Jada is something that it doesn't move, is the common understanding. But we can refine that definition. Jada in Hindi we say जो खुद को भी नहीं जानता और दूसरे को भी नहीं जानता और जिसमें हिलने की शक्ति नहीं है या स्वतः pravritti nasti. So if we translate to English, then it means that jada is that which cannot move on its own. So swata pravritti nasti, and which does not have the power of knowing. So it cannot move on its own, and it does not have the power of knowing. That is, it is consciousness. It doesn't have any consciousness of its own. So it needs a separate consciousness from itself, which will make it move. So everything in the universe, we say, is moving because there is a consciousness that is pushing them. Without that consciousness, it is nothing can exist or even be perceivable in the world. Even the smallest of atom, the electrons are moving. That electrons are moving because there is some conscious force behind that. That is the rule, we say. That conscious force is moving all of the objects in the universe. And so any movement we see in the universe, that comes from the total consciousness, that is Ishvara. Ishvara is giving the energy to everyone, the power to everyone to move, right? So even energy, we say, is jada. Shakti also is jada, because Shakti is what? It always increases and decreases. Your power to see is suddenly gone when you close your eyes or when you've gone to sleep. So that means the Shakti is no longer functioning. So it is also jada. It depends upon the consciousness to give power to it, right? So unless there is like gas in the tank, the car cannot run. That power giving substance has to be there. Then only the motion is possible. Similarly, all consciousness gives the power for everything to have motion. So even on this earth, we say everything that moves get its power from the sun, because ultimately the sun's energy is converted into all the fossil fuels and all the objects of the world, or also the trees that grow, they cannot grow without the sun. So from then only we get the wood and the energy. So all energy comes from that sun only. So similarly, consciousness is the basis from which everything moves. So all of these five karmendriyas, they get their energy from the consciousness. So the power of any indriya is limited to this body, that represents the potential or the power of that energy for this body. And the potential for the whole universe, it represents the devta. Devta is the total potential, and the indriya is the partial potential, right? So we know that we can see only certain wavelengths or certain objects. There others are beyond our range. Same for hearing also, and other actions also. So these five sense organs we have seen, the five karmendriyas, they have their own respective devtas. These devtas also depend upon the function. The name of the devta is an indication of the function. Just like we saw Upastha, the Vishay, that for Upastha, the Prajanan Indriya, the genitals, for them the devta is Prajapati. Right. So we can also call him Brahmaji, but why not? Why Prajapati? Because Prajapati represents that power of Brahmaji which looks after all the people. So it's not just people as in humans, but every moving being, right? But in Brahmaji resides the whole other power also. How to create all the Jada objects also, how to create the non-moving universe also. Right? So that total power is with Brahmaji. With Prajapati, he has so many Prajapatis, remember? So you must have heard of Daksh Prajapati. So Daksh Prajapati represents the power. He also represents one Prajapati who's looking after all the humans. And even the names there are very beautiful. If you just notice that, what is Daksh? Daksh means expertise. Expertise in something. Dakshata. So Dakshata is what? When you get really expert in something, then you very easily develop an ego. I do this best. No one can do this like me, right? So then that is what he had to suffer. That's Prajapati. He was ultimately humiliated by Shiva, and so his yajna was destroyed, right? So we all have the capacity to do yajna. Through yajna, we can attain all our desires. Every yajna is to attain all our desires, but for that, the blessing comes from the Lord. Without Lord's blessing, nothing can be achieved. So that is why Daksha Prajapati ultimately had to become a goat. So what does goat say? Meh, meh, meh. So that is ego, right? So we just see that all the devtas, all the stories in the Puranas, they have this significance which we can understand once we know the basics of what our Shastras are saying through Tattwabodha or any such grantha. There are so many, any such Prakaran grantha which will tell about this. Right. So we'll move on to the next part. Just, I think, okay, if you remember 17 components, so 17 components of the Sukshma Shariram. So we have covered 10. So the next 5 you will see they are not covered in the text, right? They are not covered in the text because the text straight away goes on to the Karan Shariram. So probably the student there already knew that. He knew the Panchapuranas and he knew the Mana and Buddhi. So he didn't ask the question. Of course, Mana and Buddhi will come later because they will be talked about at the universal cosmic level also. So, but we'll just discuss these, right? So, of the next 5, we have the 5 pranas. So, what are the 5 pranas? They are the life force that moves within us, right? Life force that moves within us. So, that life force has different functions. Those different functions help it perform functions of the physical body. Without prana, nothing can function. Once prana stops movement, we die. Right. So at the time of the death, we say what the subtle body leaves the gross body. So first of all, the 5 Gyanendriyas, they collapse into the prana. Then the prana collapse into the manas, the mind. And then finally, the whole Sukshma Shariram leaves the body. So we'll just look at the 5. I'll just bring up on a chart so that it'll be easier for you to understand. No, the chart is not in the book. I'll just share on the screen and come this in.
5 प्राण भी नहीं है बुक में.
Oh yeah, I know. So just let's bring it here.
So why does the prana alone not have devata?
Prana has devtas. Prana has devtas, but probably the author did not mention here. If we study maybe someday a text called Vedanta Sara, there that also is given. Everything has a devta. I should have kept it on top, but yeah, sorry. So these are the 5 pranas. In fact, they also have further subdivisions, right? In the Vedanta, those other subdivisions are also given. Each prana is not just one function. They also have subdivisions. So, right. So the first is the prana. Prana represents. So here the order has been modified from the text a bit because then it will be easier to understand. Prana represents the first one is called prana itself. It represents the respiratory system, right? The respiratory system, how oxygen is provided to the body, then it is absorbed in the body, and then it is used to do all the functions of the body. Because without that breathing capacity, the body itself will not start to function. Right. And then second is the apana. Apana represents the downward traveling prana. So that downward traveling does what function? It expels the system. So it is the excretory system, right? It expels the unnecessary waste from the body. So that is represented by apana, the lower vayu, right? So all of them are they are modifications of vayu only. All prana are modification of vayu only. So if we can just maybe touch on something which has not been covered here, that is that all of these karmendriya, jnanendriya, and their vishaya, they are coming from the 5 elements. They are coming from the 5 elements. So when they come from the 5 elements, then the thing we have to understand is each element is acted upon by Prakriti or nature. Prakriti before manifestation is in the nascent state. Nothing has been manifested right now. But at the time of manifestation, Prakriti separates into what we call the 3 gunas. 3 guna. So 3 gunas are Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. We'll look at them, so don't worry about the terms. Of course, maybe if you had heard it earlier also, then that's fine. So Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Sattva represents the upper going power, the knowledge aspect, the lightest aspect of Prakriti. Rajas represents the active aspect of Prakriti, movement. And Tamas represents the inertial aspect, rest. We need rest to recuperate and then again start our new day. Without that, we cannot get up for the next day. So that is also essential part of our nature. So these five elements are acted upon by Prakriti and its three gunas and splits into three. So each element from the sattvic aspect, what we call, from the sattvic aspect of each element, the uh, all of these five Gyanendriyas are born. From the Rajasic aspect, the Karmendriyas are born. Then from the Tamasic aspect, the five sense objects are born. Five sense objects because they are the most gross. And again, from the Rajasic aspect, the energy aspect of it, from that the prana is born, Vayu. So that Vayu then again is split into five depending on function. So we have seen prana and apana. So apana removes all the unnecessary objects from the system because whenever anything is staying in our system for a longer time, it might cause damage to the body, right? Whatever is needed is absorbed by the body. The not needed waste has to be removed. Otherwise, it becomes like a poison. So then next is samana. It represents the digestion system. Digestion system. So all the digestion that is done by this samana vayu. So whatever oxygen is sent to the different parts of the body, that then goes to the food and then it oxidizes the food and the act of digestion happens. Rest of it is done by the enzymes in the stomach. So that we have read in basic science. So this is something that is done by the power of samana. The samana vayu does the function of digestion. Then Vyana represents circulatory system. The blood moves all around, carrying this oxygen to other parts, the food to other parts. Once it has been digested and converted to energy. And so this Vyana represents the circulatory system. So the blood is there, but the power that is making the blood move, that is the Vyana. And then there is the fifth one, which is Udana. Udana represents, here is said throwing up. It basically represents any kind of sudden removal, right? So it represents like whenever you cough suddenly, violently, to sneeze. So there are a lot of other objects that enter the body which are not needed, which do not go out through our normal digestive system. So these require to be removed urgently. So Udana represents that urgent removal of all these objects that give us any kind of problem by entering into our system. So that is the fifth one. But there is, you can say Udbhejayati, the function is written here. It pushes out the soul at death. So that is also one more important aspect of Udan. The Udan Vayu, what does it do when finally the body has finished its lifetime or lifespan? Then here it is written soul, but be very careful. Remember, we are talking about can anyone say, what are we talking about? What?
Atma.
No, not Atma. Atma is everywhere. Atma cannot go. So, Sukshma Shariram. Sukshma Shariram is pushed out from the body at the time of death. So once this separation is done, there is nothing within the body that can make it move. So the body lays lifeless. So Udan Vayu represents this function. So all of these Pancha Prana represent forces that move within the body and help us perform all the functions. Once this stops moving, then when the person is really dead, right? So the first step, as I said, was the prana stops functioning. Then it merges. Then the Gyanendriyas also they merge back into the prana. And then finally, you cannot separate the time, but it's almost simultaneous. And then they all merge back into the mind, which then moves out of the body. which we call the Sukshma Shariram. So there the mind we are talking about is in a way the Sukshma Shariram only. All 17 components, they move out. So the Jnanendriya, Karmendriya all merge back. Right? So in this way, this completes the 15 components. Two more components, as I said earlier, but we'll just have a quick look here. So we saw that there is mana and buddhi, right? They are the remaining two components. So mana represents sankalpa vikalpatmaka manha. This is the definition. It is given later on in the text. So what does sankalpa represent? First of all, whenever we have to do anything, then we make a conscious decision in our mind. I want to do this. So I want to have a cup of tea or coffee or whatever. So that is the sankalpa. The mind makes up some decision to do something. So this is not the final decision. This is just a wish or a desire. Okay? A wish is made in the mind. Ichha. So that ichha has to be translated into action. So what happens? The mind gives us different vikalpa. Vikalpa means different choices or separate things, different things. That is what. So Vikalpa represents the different choices that the mind gives us at the time of our expressing any kind of desire. So when any desire is expressed, okay, I can have the tea at home, I can go to a shop outside, I can go to a fancy place, I can go to CCD or whatever places kids go to these days, or coffee. So you can you have a variety of choices, right? And even there you have different kinds of teas, coffees. So all those choices are there. So whatever you like most, you will go for, right? So that decision has to be made. So who makes that decision? That is the buddhi next. That is the function of the buddhi. So buddhi is defined as nischay atmika buddhi. Nischay atmika buddhi. So nischay atmika is nischay means how the one to make the decision. So that is the boss. The buddhi will decide what to do. So that decision has to be based upon what is good for me, what do I like the most. All of these from previous experience, it will go. So ultimately, we will see later on, this is an eightfold cycle. This is the eightfold cycle of karma, where everything that we experience in life, that happens in a chain. So first of all, we make a choice, a conscious choice or a desire. Then we coin the different options, vikalpaha. Then again, after doing those vikalpas, we make the final choice. So nischaya. Then after nischaya, we actually try and enjoy the object, which is bhoga. So after bhoga, that bhoga gives us a subtle impression in our mind. That is called samskara. So that samskara is built up in our mind. So then after that samskara is there, then there comes karma phalam. The karma phalam represents how strong the desire developed in me after enjoying that object, right? So that represents the karma phalam. So that karma phalam will again generate a desire within me for enjoying that object later in the future. And then finally, for that, I will have to get a stimulus. I have to get a stimulus, right? I just can't feel like having tea all the time, right? So maybe there is a time for that. Maybe there is a place for that. Maybe there is a visual stimulus for that. Sometimes it happens. We see something delicious, or we see something that we'd like to do, and then we want to do. It was not in my mind earlier on, but just the act of seeing it brings that thought into my mind, and so thus the desire arises at that moment itself, and then this whole eightfold cycle continues. So we'll look into that a bit more in detail when we go to karma. After karmafal, then the sanskara build, the sanskara you go to.
You said desire, the breakout, the mixture, and then the bhog after sanskar, then karmafal.
Then it is stored in the mind as a karma, as a desire for the future, as something to be enjoyed in the future, as an impression.
So what is sanskar and what is
Sanskar is the first impression, and then later on it is stored as a vritti in the chit, as a thought in the mind, in the memory.
vritti?
Yeah, so that vritti is stored. right?
Again, the desire.
Again, the desire will come. There has to be a stimulus in between. Contact. So there has to be contact. Right. So then, in this way, mana and buddhi function in giving us the different options that we can enjoy in life, and they make the decision, right? So as we go on in life, the buddhi learns about the things that are good for us, and that is how we regulate our choices, right? Once we see something that we really enjoy, maybe the buddhi will say, yes, I can enjoy this, fine, I like this. But later on, it might notice that it is addictive, or something wrong for me, or it is something that has long-term bad effects. There are some medicines that have long-term bad effects. So doctors know once they will recommend only those medicines which are suitable for that disease for a short term. They will not allow you to take longer. There are a lot of medicines, Seema Rekha ji would know, they are for psychological treatment, but they become addictive later on. So that the doctor has to be very careful. So all of these, this is the work of the buddhi. As long as the buddhi is alert, it is able to control these choices. But if the buddhi is not alert, the mind becomes the controller. So our goal in life should always be to understand through the buddhi what is good for me, what is beneficial for me. We'll see that in Priya, Modh and Pramod Vrittis later on. There are different thoughts within us that make us addicted to something. So those thoughts we have to be very, very careful about, so that when I should be able to evaluate that is my mind controlling me or is my buddhi controlling me. So both of them we have to pick up very carefully. So now we come to one very crucial part, which is the Karan Shariram. Sthul Sukshma Shariram we have seen finally. So this one, listen very carefully. A lot of people, even after listening many times, do not grasp the concept. It is a very, I'll not say very difficult concept once you just listen a bit carefully. Just this word, anirvachya, it creates almost wars between people. They say they do not understand. So many people, they are fighting in internet forums. Vedanta does not know the concept of anirvachya. They themselves have not understood what is anirvachya. So we'll clarify. So just read this. Karan shariram kim anirvachya anadya vidya rupam sharir dvayasya karan matram sat swarupa jnanam nirvikalpaka rupam yadasti tat karan shariram. So what is this Karan Shariram? The Karan is the cause. What is this causal body? When I was studying initially, I would read this as casual body, and I found a very, a very disturbing word. What is this casual body? So it's not casual body. It is CAUSAL, causal body. It is the cause for everything. So it is the cause for everything. So we have three words here given. Anirvachya, then anadi, and avidya. You can write them down separately because the word here is in a compound word, and so you have to split it up. So anirvachya, anadi, and avidya rupa. So we'll start with the middle word, anadi, beginningless. Right. So first of all, we have to understand one very key concept about creation. What is creation? A lot of us Anirvachya, Anadi, and Avidya. Right? So all these three are very important words. So we look at Anadi first. So first of all, we have to understand the concept of creation. The concept of creation. What is creation? A lot of people, the initially I said in the beginning of the classes, what is one of the questions in our mind? Why has God created this universe, this evil universe, and thrown me into it with all the pains and sorrows and all the problems? So the answer for that is given here. It is what this world is in a causal state. That means the world is not created. There is no creation. So why are you screaming creation? There is no creation. There is no dissolution. Then why do we use this word Srishti and Pralaya? So that we have to understand. So first of all, what Vedanta says, or what our Shastra says in total, that there is no such thing called creation. Why? Because there is a law of conservation of matter, law of conservation of energy, similarly law of conservation of all the objects in the universe. Nothing in the universe can be created. God cannot create an ounce of matter. Whatever is there, he can merely provide it into a different shape. Right? Those shapes are dependent upon the different jivatmas which exist and their sankalpas or their desires. So that is how he creates the universe. So Ishwar is not in that sense a creator. He just manifests what was unmanifest. So all the objects in the universe that we talk about, they have what we call a causal state. So how do we understand that causal state? We can understand like in case of any plant, initially there is the seed, right? There is the seed. The seed is the causal state. Seed is the causal state. It is the current sharir of the tree, the seed, right? But still for us, for the tree, the seed is visible. For us, the seed is visible. But this causal body is totally not visible. It represents what the state where it is nothing is manifest, right? So nothing is manifest. So in this, all the objects in the universe, whenever there is any kind of production or anything is born, there is something in the causal state, like the baby will be born from the womb of the mother. In that state also, the single cell that has been formed, is in a state of, it's just a round mass of round cell. Slowly it will differentiate. So it is the DNA in which the information is coded, from which the different parts will emerge. Different parts will emerge. So initially it is in undifferentiated form. So you cannot tell one from the other. None of the parts are separately visible. Even in the case of the seed also, even though you can see the seed, but you cannot see the whole tree inside. Right? You cannot see the branches, the stem, the main, all the leaves and all the different parts. They have not yet come out. It is there in coded in a genetic information, and further it takes more material or minerals from the ground from which it builds and separates them out, and the full tree comes to manifestation. So we say, because of this law of conservation, there is no creation as such. Everything in the universe is either in the manifest state or unmanifest state. The unmanifest state is the causal state. The unmanifest state is the causal state, right? So this body is visible to us. The Sukshma Sharira, Sthul Shariram, the Sukshma Shariram also is visible to us. We can see the mind working, the consciousness, as long as it is there, as long as we are waking, or even in the dream state, the consciousness can perceive all of these things that are happening, right? So here we say there is a trio functioning, triputi, trio function. What is that trio? The consciousness, then there is the instrument in between, and then there is the object. Right. So the instrument is connecting the object and the consciousness. So in between you can say the mind. So the instruments are the Gyanendriyas. So this connection happens, then only can perception occur. But when the Gyanendriyas are no longer there, we have seen already that at the time of death, the Sukshma Shariram, the Gyanendriyas, Karmendriyas, all have merged back into the Sukshma Shariram. So this Sukshma Sharir again has a cause. That is the cause. That cause is called the causal body, the Karan Shariram. That Karan Shariram is there in the unmanifest state. So whenever there is the death of a physical body, Sukshma Shariram leaves this body and goes on to the next body, right? And ultimately it keeps going on doing that till the time of Pralayam. The total universe dissolves. But there, from that universe, how will the new universe emerge? How will the new universe emerge? Within that causal state, within that Prakriti, within that Pralaya Sthiti, there is something that we call the causal state, where all the Jivatmas have their causal body remaining. The causal body does not dissolve even at Pralaya. right? So God is very intelligent. He has kept all the seeds with him for creating the new universe. So farmer will keep some seeds for bringing out a new crop. So that way God also keeps all the sharirams in the causal state. So that causal state is not perceptible. We cannot experience it anywhere, right? We cannot experience. So what happens, like if there is something I want to see, like a whole city, I want to see a whole city. How do you see that? You can create a model for that. You can create a model of city, right? So in this way, we have this very beautiful rule in Vedanta or in the law of nature, which we say yatha vyashti tatha samashti, or reverse yatha samashti tatha vyashti. However, the total is similarly the individual also is. There will always be some characteristic that will be present there. So if we have to experience this, or rather we can't experience it, we'll understand this. Then daily we can experience. Daily how? When we go into state of deep sleep. When we go into deep sleep, then we are in the Karanavastha, causal state. In that causal state, my mind is not functioning, my buddhi is not functioning. So for me, the body is not there. But still, I am there. I am there in the causal state, right? And so when I wake up, I can analyze that and understand that in that causal state, that model for me is available, in that through which I can understand that there is a causal state when no perception is happening, right? So you cannot smash the whole universe and destroy it and go into pralayam and somehow perceive the Sukshma Shariram, Karan Shariram, sorry. But you cannot perceive the Karan Shariram there. But you can, conceptually, you can understand. Conceptually, you can understand that the Karan Shariram is there as the seed form for the universe. So what is that seed form? That seed form contains all of your vasanas. Vasanas means all of your hidden desires. So all of them are there in that state. So a vasana has to first convert into what we call a thought, vritti. So if you have a certain desire within you, even an emotion within you, it cannot be expressed until there is a thought that comes into your mind, and then that thought is can be expressed even physically, or it can move around in your mind as some kind of imagination, so this process of where the vasanas reside in that current shariram, they become the source for the later production of the sukshma shariram in the form that is known to us, and then finally it has the gross body when that sukshma shariram enters the body assigned to it for a particular janma, any janma that sukshma, yeah, so that sukshma shariram will accordingly be able to enter a body, and it will be able to live out its the samskaras that are allotted to it, the karma phalas that are allocated to it for one particular janma. So the Karan Shariram is the basis or the unmanifest part. So that anadi part is what? It is beginningless. Why? Because there cannot be any beginning point for something that is the cause of everything. It goes back infinitely in time. But yes, it has an ending point. What is the ending point? That ending point is moksha. That ending point is when we understand that none of this is unreal. None of them is, this universe is real. And so therefore, sorry. So therefore, since this is not real, I don't have to get attached. And once I drop the attachment, I get released from the grip that this world has on me. So after that, there is no stool, sukshma or karan shariram. But this karan shariram will of course persist within all creations. Even if there is pralayam, it will be there. Next Srishti also, it will be there. But then it will keep on continuing. Anita, you want to ask something? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, vasanas, which means causal body, is going to be different for every entity.
Yeah, that those vasanas define the different causal body. Otherwise, they will merge into one, right? So every individual has different vasanas. The sum total of vasanas from all births previous, they are stored in that. And some are so deeply buried into the subconscious that we cannot know them. Only some come on top when there is some stimulus, something that stimulates that particular vasana, then it will come on top.
Then what is contained in memory, sir? That's part of the Sukshma body. How is that different from vasanas?
A vasana is the desire, and there is one part that we have not covered. We can look it into later on. So if we look at the mind, then the mind has mana and buddhi, but there are two further dependent entities on that. So actually, when we talk about the mind, we call it antakaran. So antakaran chatushtaya. There are four parts. So man, buddhi, chit, ahankar. So chit represents the memory faculty. Chitta represents memory. So within the memory are stored what we call samskaras. Every impression. Okay. Impression is different from vasana. You have to remember. Samskara is something I've experienced. It might not translate into a desire for that. Like something I liked very deeply or I hated very deeply, it will become a vasana. But something that has no impression on me, it will just be a samskara that I experienced. It will not build up as a vasana. Right. So for a lot of people, if someone has smoked, then for that person, smoking is a vasana. But someone who has never smoked or maybe smoked and not liked it at all, or decided that it is useless for him, for him that smoke will not become a vasana. So you might have so many samskaras, but they will not all translate into vasanas, desires. So those desires are a sum total of what we become in later janmas. Is that clear?
Just to clarify, sir, if you have raga and dvesha attached
Yeah.
to your impression, that becomes
Yeah.
a vasana to causal body.
Yeah.
If
Raga
you
dosha is
don't
there.
have any judgment, it's just an experience. If you leave it as it is, it remains
Yeah.
in the chitta.
It remains chitta. Yeah. And then what happens is over a period of time, it goes away also. Because we have one life, maybe by the time of the second life, they don't remain. Right. So in the case of rebirth, that is what is happening. There is such a huge gap from the time that we leave this body and then enter the next body. We don't even remember something from 10 days ago. So that old is very difficult, but you have to have a very big, deep impression. That is how some people remember Purva Janmas. Some people remember the previous Janmas. But usually it is limited to the immediate preceding, right? So what is that process also is very detailed. Because when we leave this body, it depends on how much our attachment is to the people around us, right? So if the attachment is low, then we can immediately go on to the next body. But if not, then we go to what we call Pitralok. Pitralok. So in Pitralok, usually it is said it exists up to 3 generations. So for 3 generations time, that body remains in that Pitralok only. And that is why up to 3 generations, you propitiate your forefathers by doing the puja for the Pitars, right? Because you are mostly attached to whom? Your son, your grandson, and great-great-grandson. Great-grandson. So that is usually the maximum. So till there your attachment is. Once you are gone, once you have left the body, then any generation coming after that, your attachment will not be there. So that is why we say up to 3 generations, the Pitra might be hanging in his place. But if someone is of very detached nature, he can move on, right? So that way, so this is how the vasanas, they take hold of us. They exist in our current sharira, right? They're very subtle. Yes.
So one last question. So
Yes.
since you said if you're too attached, you may go to Pitri Loka.
Yeah.
Then in that case, what determines where I am born into in my next birth? I may have been born in many different families and I may have attachment with many families. Why
Yeah.
next birth in this family, maybe some other birth, some other family?
Yeah.
What kind of
That is, if we read the Gita, we'll find there also. So there also Lord says very clearly that birth is not going to be on your attachment. It will depend on your spiritual progress. both spiritual, material, all kinds of progress. So wherever your deepest desire is for whatever you want to become, so in this Janma, you might not have a desire for some spiritual higher longing. You might want to become a movie star. You watch them and you want to become like one. So you didn't have the resources in this Janma. So next Janma, maybe you'll born in a family where you can pursue that. Right? So whatever your deepest desire, in whichever family it is most easier for you to achieve that desire, you will be born there, where you can continue your whatever you had learned. That is why a lot of kids have this unique talent and abilities which are not there in all kids. Some kid is born with a talent for music. Some kid is born with talent for acting. Some is born with some other different kinds of artistic talents. Some memorize shastras so very well, right from very early age. So they have had some deep attachment or study of those which is carried on to the next janma, and that is how Ishvara gives us different bodies, and that is how our Varna ashram vyavastha is also born, where it is advisable that we follow into the family that we are born into. We follow their profession and follow their interest. But of course, humans or jivas are ever evolving. So even in one janma, you can be born into one family where you can quickly finish that interest and move on to something higher. You need not be stuck with the profession. So that is why there is the provision for moving it from one varna or one we call varna, and the different professions that we have, jati. So from moving to another jati, that is allowed, but with a lot of test. The teacher would take a lot of tests before he will allow you to move that. Because Varna Vyavastha preserves the system where everyone is available for every kind of work. Right? We need all kinds of people. So Varna Vyavastha, when the Britishers came, the first thing they said was we have to break this. Because due to this, they are so united. I read this in this Oxford History of India. So they wanted to break this Varna Vyavastha first. So that is how they created that narrative, of bringing. Even today, modern people will fight with you. This is evil. Caste system is evil. They don't understand. There are so many levels to that. We will cover that later on when we go to karma part. But we have to understand it is a very scientific and beautiful system which will be beneficial if used. But if you don't want to use, then your choice. Then you will suffer some imbalance in society by which society will not function smoothly. Varna Vyavastha is for smooth function of society, so that every person is, for every activity, people are available. Today, we have lost so many castes and professions just because of this. Everyone wants to become a doctor or an engineer or whatever. Right? So, we'll move on to the next part. So, the current Shariram we have seen, basically all the options. So, we are running short of time. I think we can take 5 minutes more, if it's okay with everyone. Okay. So we saw Anadi, then Avidya Rupam. Avidya Rupam is born out of ignorance, right? So that is a very key aspect of the Karan Shariram. The Karan Shariram exists because of our not knowing our true nature. जब तक हम अपना असली स्वरूप नहीं जानते हम फंस जाते जगत में. Whenever we are unaware of our true nature, whenever we are bound by our desires, they blindfold us and we cannot see our true nature. So we are again born into this world. So avidya is the basic, which we call the mool avidya, the basic ignorance, which is beginningless. So anadi avidya rupam. So you can use both these words also together. Why? Because this why is ignorance anadi? What is your knowledge about if you have studied, let us say, quantum physics? So what is your ignorance level of that subject? It is anadi. You never knew it right from the beginning. It is on the day that you learn that subject that it becomes known to you, right? So ignorance is always anadi, Ignorance is always another. There is no beginning point for ignorance. So that is why same way Karan Shiriram is, we say Anadi Avidya Rupam, because there is no beginning point for this ignorance. So we have suffered infinite janmas back into the past. So that is the reason for this technical term Anadi. Then also we look at Anirvachya. So this is a very controversial word. People say you Vedantins don't have any knowledge about Maya, so they use Anirvachya. What does Anirvachya mean? That which cannot be expressed. Vacha, Vani, that which can be said in words. So Anirvachya, it cannot be expressed in words. So you don't know how to express what your word is Maya, but that is why you have given this word. That is totally wrong, right? So let us understand this quickly. What is Anirvachya? So whenever we look at any object in the universe, what have we observed? Everything that we can see is mithya, right? So what does the mithya tattva, what is the mithyapan represent for that object? That represents that for every object, let us say this wood table, this bed or whatever, there is a material cause. For this table, it is wood. Yeah. So the wood is real. So the substance is real. The shape is mithya. Substance is real. Shape is mithya. So for all the objects in the world, the substance is real, but the shape is mithya. So that is why we say the shape being mithya, that means you cannot say it is real or unreal. Because you perceive it, it is real. The shape is seen to you, but there is no such object called wood, object called table. It is just the wood in a shape of a table, in this shape, right? So similarly, we can, as we seen earlier also, all of the objects of the world, you can resolve back into the Moola Prakriti. So this wood will be resolved back into the mud from which it came from. The mud will be resolved from, which is we call the Prithvi Tattva, to so on up to Akasha, and then Akasha into Maya and Prakriti. So that ultimately everything comes from Prakriti, which again we say Jada. So again it is unreal. So everything in this universe is unreal. So that means that all the objects of this world are unreal. So Anirvachya means neither Satya nor Asatya. Neither real, not real, unreal. Neither real because the reality belongs to the Atma, from which everything is projected out. That is the only real thing. Atma Satyam, Jagat Mithya. We saw in the initial part. And so, what does this mean? This means that this Maya or Prakriti or whatever we calling is Anirvachya. Why? Because all the shapes that we see, anything that we see in the world is merely a shape. Everything we see is a shape. So it has no inherent reality of its own. So we cannot say that it is real or unreal. But we can perceive it. So that does not mean Maya is not there. And that also does not mean Maya exists. Maya has dependent existence. That is the main thrust of Anirvachya. That is what Anirvachya means. It does not mean I cannot tell you what Anirvachya means, or I cannot tell you what Prakriti means. It merely means Prakriti is a dependent entity. That is what it means. So in that way, you can clearly express the nature of Prakriti as by this word Anirvachya. There is another Anirvachya. We will come to that. That is about Atma. What is Atma? Atma is also Anirvachya. Why? Because Atma also is not perceived by anything. It is the perceiver, not perceived. So it cannot be perceived by anything. So that it is, we call it beyond mind and sense organs. Mind and sense organs cannot grasp the Atma. So there also it is Anirvachya. Mind and word cannot express the Atma because it is beyond the mind and all. It is more subtle than the mind and the sense organs. But the other objects of the world are gross. They are grosser than the mind and sense organs. So they can perceive them. So Atma is very subtle. बहुत सूक्ष्म. Sukshmatamam. So that is why that is also Anirvachya. Right? So we have seen these three words. The remaining part will, I think, look in the next class because we run out of time. Sharir dvasya karan matram satsvarupa jnanam nirvikalpaka rupam. that all those parts about the Karan Shariram will. This is very short. It won't take much time. We can wind this up in the next class. Okay. So we'll wind up for today. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah Hari Om